Hello, my name is Tate Walden. My persuasive speech is on kneeling for the national anthem, athletes kneeling for the national anthem, and if it's acceptable or not. So my thesis is that kneeling for the national anthem is not always a sign of disrespect. It is done to prove a strong point about racial injustice in this country. This all started back in August of 2016 when several players started kneeling during the national anthem in protest of police brutality and racism. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick started the protest of kneeling during the national anthem and got lots of criticism and backlash, which affected his football career, as many teams thought his protest was a distraction to the team. He was blackballed, and many teams did not want him in their organization. Many people took this kneeling during the national anthem as disrespect to this country, which is understandable, especially for people who served in the military to risk their lives for this country. But Kaepernick was doing it because he didn't agree with how the police force was treating African Americans, as there were headlines of police brutality and racism. In 2017, the protest became more common in the NFL, as over 200 players in the league knelt in response to President Donald Trump stating that the NFL teams should fire the players who were kneeling in protest. Many players joined Colin in protest even though it could have been detrimental to their playing career. This is still happening in 2020. Recently in the NBA, organizations have agreed to start kneeling before games during the national anthem because of the recent racial injustices going on in our country. Many players spread special messages to individuals who lost their lives to police brutality. The NBA has been very accepting of how players spread the word of social injustice. The NBA has even let players have different social justice issues on the back of their jerseys. This year in 2020, the kneeling during the national anthem was far more accepted from everyone, as racial injustice has been a very important and current conversation over the last 5 months. The NBA did not get backlash from the president as the NFL did back in 2016, and not many were talking about kneeling in a negative way. Since 1981, the NBA has required their players to stand in a line during the national anthem. This year was an exception, of course. The gesture was not shocking, as all the players each time felt it was right to kneel, making the act even more powerful. Whereas back in 2016, when Colin Kaepernick kneeled, it was easier to criticize and question since it was only a singular player standing or kneeling in protest. Since kneeling has become more of a norm, people are not taking it as harshly anymore. Since everyone in the world is aware of the racial injustices happening, the kneeling is more acceptable in today's climate. My opinion about the kneeling and protest during the national anthem has changed over time. Back when Colin Kaepernick knelt in 2016, I was in agreement with the rest of the world, who said that it was a disgrace to this country and that it was rude to those who have served in the military and armed forces over the years. But I was not aware back then of all the racial injustice happening in 2016, as it was not as heavily reported on as it is now. Now in 2020, I completely agree that it is okay to kneel during the national anthem, especially after seeing the videos of police treating African Americans unfairly. It made me realize how messed up some people are, and how sadly there is still a lot of racism in this country. I think kneeling during the national anthem is a powerful way to prove a point about this country. It's not violent and is clear enough to where everyone can see the point being made, especially since a lot of Americans look up to these high-level athletes, and this can make Americans realize that there is an unfairness happening in the U.S. People who refuse to watch an NBA game or an NFL game because of the kneeling are not listening to the reason why players are doing this, and are not up to date on the racism that occurs every day in this country. These athletes are using their platform to try and spread the word about the major problems happening, and if you don't support that, then you are part of the problem as well. You have to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's not fair that many African Americans have to be scared when being pulled over by a police officer. The police should be there to protect and serve Americans, not harm them for little to no reason. An article from the USA Today states that the country now accepts that we have done enough to address racial disparities. Also, 65% of adults say that they support the protests, and 54% say that their viewpoint on racial injustice has changed as a result of this movement. Thank you.